happy Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in and for choosing to spend some of your time with me. I'm Milagros, and this is a little space I like to carve out to share different tips, tools, techniques, nuggets, stories, anecdotes, whatever I can to help us collectively and individually move the needle, even if it's 1 degree at a time, to get to new levels of healthy and happy. And today I want to talk about disconnecting from old stories or goals or even dreams in order to make room for something new. I was recently having this conversation with someone, and she was sharing how she had this story about who she was supposed to be and what her life was supposed to look like, and it didn't pan out, and she's just miserable and she feels stuck. And I thought, yeah, I get that. And you got to feel all those feels. So in order to kind of work your way through this process, what I would recommend is that first and foremost, you acknowledge that you did have an old dream that feels unfulfilled. And that could look like writing it down. That could look like having a conversation with someone, right? And then the second thing is that you really do have to mourn that, because if you held on to it, especially for a really long time, you attached parts of your identity to that. Right? And so there is a severing that needs to happen and a separation that needs to happen. There's a mourning process that needs to happen. So in that process of mourning, what I suggest and what I do for myself, I suggest this to my coaching clients, and I do this for myself, is to create some kind of ceremony or ritual by which to begin the severing process, right? I think about my a family member. She's a nurse in operating rooms, and she said it's almost like a ritual. You go in, you scrub down to your elbows, you wash your face, you put on all these layers, you take off something else, you put on all these fresh garments, you prepare the room. The doctor comes in, and the doctor had a ritual to get themselves ready, and it's this constant preparation throughout so that when all the pieces come together, they're ready to sever, basically to remove. And then once there's a removal, there's a different ritual that happens where you're closing it back up, right? So I think about that because our emotional work sometimes feels just as invasive and as harsh as something physical. So what is the ritual that you're going to create for yourself? What is the ceremony? What would that look like? Some people, and you could just sit and in meditation and sit with some self-awareness and come up with an array of ideas based on things that you've seen or things that you've heard or what feels good for you. For me, a big part of my ritual is when I'm separating myself from something old or some older version of myself or an old dream. It has to do with fire and water. I love the combination of these two elements. So I will write it up, and like, this was the old dream and it did not come to pass, and I'm separating myself from this story. And so for me, I would burn it, right? I would create a little fire and have a ritual and thank the story for having been implanted to begin with. And then part of my ritual as it's burning is, what did I learn about myself from that story? How did I grow from that story? How did I evolve, even though it didn't come to pass? What did I recognize? What is it really that I want, that I thought that tangible thing was going to get me? And then how can I find that already in other areas of my life, right? So kind of practicing this kind of ceremony ritual. You could dress in all white, right? And then I would take that new story, those ashes and everything, those embers would burn into the world. And then I would take that new story, that new thing that I wrote, I would kind of hold it to myself, not literally, but you can. And then I would find a body of water and submerge myself in a body of water, like a cleansing, like a baptism to the new story, right? And just giving myself room to really acknowledge and then mourn and process that story. And then the third part of that is recognizing that you do have to give yourself room, because it's a process. I would love to say you burn that piece of paper and then you're done forever and always. That's not real, right? It's not like you go to a funeral of someone that you loved, and then once the funeral's over, you're like, okay, next. No, it's a constant process of this remembrance and then choosing to feel all the feels and not stay in the moment or in the depths of the negativity. I'm going to feel all of it, and then I'm going to remember that they're no longer in pain, or I'm going to remember that that story no longer has a hold on me. I'm going to remember that I learned and grew so much from that story. I'm going to remember that that story connected me to what I really want, which is this thing. And I have that in these multitudes of ways in my life, right? So that when we're moving from an old story to a new story, there might be some severing that needs to happen. There was the woman that I was speaking of earlier. She wanted to have a really big family, and then it turned out that she couldn't have kids. And when we really sat and unpacked it, she went through her ritual, and then afterwards we talked, and she said, I realized that I didn't have my own kids, but I get to spoil my nieces and nephews, and I was able to take in and like other people's kids when they were having a hard time at home and really provide them with a safe space. And so I didn't get to mother the way I thought I needed to mother, but I've been mothering this whole time. And because I didn't have my own children and I wasn't able to have my own children, I really was able to show up for them in a way that sometimes their own parents couldn't, because there was too much familiarity, right? And I thought, what? And she's crying and she's telling me this, and she's like, these are tears of joy. And then her new story is that she's going to find ways to mother throughout her life and in her relationships that aren't necessarily, it doesn't have to do with her own babies. Finding ways to mother that she's already been doing, right? So when we give ourselves room to let go of the old story that we created and that's not happening or gonna happen, and really use that to shift and create a new story that is empowering, that is powerful, that is a way to be of service, a way to protect and take care so that I can be of service. We really find our power in those places. We really find that life is actually quite beautiful, and it's not out to get us, right? It's just, if this is how it's playing out, how can I alter my story so that it's playing out to my benefit, so that it's playing out in a way that I'm participating with it? It doesn't feel like it's against me, right? So acknowledge the old story, and you can write that down. Give yourself a chance to mourn it through ritual or ceremony, whatever that is, and then write the new story and then live in it. And give yourself room throughout the whole thing, recognizing that it is a process and an ebb and flow. So I hope that this was helpful for whoever needed it. And I know that it's not the same, but this is also a huge facet of who I am, this kind of spiritual unpacking, and shifting of the mindset. The mindset mastery is a big part of what I do and who I am as a person. So I hope that this was helpful. If you know someone who can benefit from it, please share it. If you haven't already, subscribed to my channel. And get over to my website, www.mariamilagros.net. Click on the purple toolbar, and you'll be updated with these videos weekly, as well as any upcoming workshops or trainings or public places that I'll be speaking at, and any features that I have of other women who are doing amazing things and helping to bring more joy and power into our lives. So that's all I have. I'm sending you love and light for both your old stories and your new. Peace.